This has been a long time coming. Ever since my first Daggerfall videos started blowing up, I've gotten requests for a Linguist run. The languages are some of the most underutilized skills that the game of Daggerfall has to offer, especially given how many there are. Let's start by establishing a basic understanding of what exactly these skills are. Centaurian, Daedric, Dragonish, Giantish, Harpy, Impish, Nymph, Orcish, and Spriggan. Throw in Streetwise and Etiquette, and that's 11 out of the total 35 skills that the game has. That's almost a third of the potential skills you can pick. In the base game, all of these skills work in the same way. There are 4 values we care about here. The value of the relevant language skill, our personality attribute, whether we have our weapon drawn, and the Comprehend Languages spell effect. These values are put into this formula, which spits out your chance of success. What happens when you succeed? The enemy becomes pacified, meaning it won't attack you unless you attack it first. In normal gameplay, this is sometimes useful, but you might notice that before enchanting, this success chance caps out at 60. And worse yet, your skill level is actually only a minor player in your overall success chance. A skill of 0 gives you no bonus, sure, but a skill of 100 still only grants you plus 10, an extraordinarily small amount. Your personality has a greater impact on your success chance. We did it, guys! We found out what personality is supposed to be good for. Maybe after this run, I'll stop leveling this awful attribute. This even makes enchanting for language skills really bad. Let's say you wanted to guaranteed pacify one type of enemy. You would need to somehow push a language skill that you have mastered another 400 levels. For reference, you can only enchant up to 25 pieces of equipment with a plus 15 skill enhancement. That's only a bonus of 375. You might notice that 375 is less than 400, so there's no way to ever actually guarantee that you will pacify every enemy. Not that you can't get pretty close, but true 100% isn't feasible through normal gameplay. So that's our languages deep dive for Daggerfall. It's worth noting that all of the language skills work as a sort of aura in the base game, and will attempt to pacify anything that comes within its range one time. This is great, and we can do all the math we want, but hold on. I've already done a playthrough as a pacifist. All the language skills do is make enemies passive, so how are we going to make this interesting? For that, we have the Language Skills Overhaul mod by Macadaynu. So sorry if I fucked up your name. This run is not about being a pacifist. This run is about getting minions to do our dirty work for us, which this mod allows us to do. I'll talk a bit more about the specifics once we get through character creation, so let's do that real quick, shall we? Alright, so for our race, we're going to take a Breton because I haven't picked a Breton in a while. Next, we're going to take every single language skill available to us. Now, you might remember that I listed them all out earlier, but some things have changed. Nymph, Spriggan, and Centaurian have been replaced with Necromancy, Animal Taming, and Sylvan Tongue. This is the first change we actually notice with the mod. These skills change things significantly. Starting with Sylvan Tongue, it replaces the Centaurian skill, and gives us the ability to pacify Nymphs, Spriggans, and Centaurs by unifying the 3 of them under one skill. In doing this, it opens up 2 other skills. Animals, by default, cannot be pacified in Daggerfall, but Animal Taming allows you to do exactly that, and replaces the Spriggan skill. Necromancy, replacing Nymph, allows one to pacify undead like skeletons or liches. Liches in vanilla can be pacified with a high enough etiquette skill. The same goes for vampires, and ancient liches. This mod, however, expands your repertoire to skeletons, mummies, ghosts, and wraiths as well. Very helpful for our goal of amassing a small army of minions to do our dirty work for us. The 6 skills we're going to be prioritizing for leveling are Daedric, Orcish, and Necromancy in our primary skills, Etiquette and Streetwise in our major skills, and Harpy in our minors. Even with all of the languages, that's still only 11 out of the 12 skills we can choose, so what are we going to fill that last slot with? For that extra skill, we're going to be using Mysticism. This is mainly because this has the Comprehend Languages spell effect, and even though it doesn't seem like that works with the mod, I still want it for flavor and plan to keep it on as much as possible. Our stat distribution favors personality, intelligence, and endurance at the expense of luck and agility. For my advantages, I'm taking increased magery 3x and spell absorption. For disadvantages, I'm going to take a few critical weaknesses so that I can hopefully get levels a bit quicker. Lastly, I'm pumping my health a little bit. I'm not going to be raising my fists for anything this playthrough if I can help it. So take a look at my background bonuses and let's get started, shall we? So now that we're in Privateer's Hold, let's talk a bit more about our new mod. By default, whenever you come into range of an enemy that is susceptible to one of your language skills, the game automatically tries to pacify them. With this mod, however, you have to manually activate each enemy. This will make a check to see if you pacify them. It should go without saying that each language only affects a certain range of enemies, and generally it's self-evident what works on what. Orcish working on all variations of orcs, for example. You can adjust the settings somewhat on this, but by default you get 3 tries to pacify an enemy. There is also a setting to remove the dice roll from this and make these checks deterministic, but I left the rolls on because that seemed more interesting. When you do successfully pacify them, you can then strike up a conversation with them, which gives you a few more options, including attempting to recruit them into your party. This requires yet another check to do successfully, and is far from a guarantee, but at least it doesn't make them hostile again. This is going to be how we plan to tackle the entire rest of the game. So, how rough is this going to be? Well, we spent most of Privateer's Hold running around and praying that we could get some of the denizens on our side. We managed to successfully tame our first friend, a giant bat. Once we do, he fights the enemy giant bat for us and wins, so we pet him and give him a name, Batsby. I love Batsby. Batsby is my friend. It's not too much longer until we find another friend, but no, Batsby! You will be remembered for your great sacrifice. Our newest friend is a skeleton who managed to avenge Batsby. I decided to name him Mr. Skeletal. Skeletons are pretty strong early on. Most of the enemies we run into end up being not much of a challenge for our new friend, Mr. Skeletal. We're having a tough time with a lot of the enemies in this dungeon because most of them are animals and some stripe of martial human. Our etiquette is pretty low, and animal taming, while useful, isn't something I wanted to prioritize because I'm too edgy for animals. I want undead and Daedra. Technically speaking, I think the strongest allies are other humanoids, but that's really only true once we get to extremely high levels. We go past the exit a little bit because I know there are at least a couple more skeletons we can get in here. This one I named Skeletron. I wasn't quite sure how allied movement worked yet, so I spent a while trying to get them to follow me through the door. It turns out later that this is unnecessary, and that if they get too far from us, they'll simply teleport to our side. When we finally get to the last skeleton, we successfully convert all 3 skeletons to our side. Hell yeah, necromancy. Now that we've got them all, we can safely leave the dungeon and go to Daggerfall. As we enter the city, I notice something. Your necromancy has been reported. Now, I'd be lying if I said I didn't know about this beforehand. There is another option offered by the mod that makes necromancy illegal. You can turn it off if you want, but I think it makes sense with the necromancers being a bit of an outlaw faction, so I left it on. While I try to do a couple of Mages Guild quests, I find that my skeletons are getting into fights with the local guards. I very much do not want to get arrested for murdering a guard, nor do I want to have to deal with guards every time I come back to Daggerfall, so I make great efforts to not let them attempt an arrest on me. As I'm slowly finding my way through a couple of these quests, all 3 of my skeleton companions eventually go down. Rest in peace, Mr. Bones, Mr. Skeletal, and Skeletron. I will miss all of you. I'll have to start parting ways with my undead party members when I leave dungeons. If you're wondering why I'm doing quests for the Mages Guild again, it's mainly because I haven't looked up which factions can do what languages as of yet. But I know that the Mages Guild has Daedric and Orcish. Leveling our Daedric skill naturally is going to be a bit difficult in the beginning especially, as Daedra are pretty rare. This is by design, of course. Even the lowest level Daedra are level 17. We're going to hopefully remedy remedy this a little by getting training at the guild. We also pick up the spell Tongues, which has the Comprehend Languages spell effect. For our purposes, it's mostly going to serve as a way to empty our spell points so that we can better absorb enemy magic. Since I still need money, I decided to take a dungeon delving quest so that I could try to get some more loot. Letter deliveries might be safer, but actually having to visit a dungeon will be way more fun than just blindly grinding out gold until we can crush the main story. We take a quest to find an ingredient in a dungeon. This dungeon has a lot of animals and a lot of warriors. Not so much in the way of undead or Daedra, but we did find an orc. We didn't get to recruit the orc, unfortunately. I managed to pacify Jimmer the warrior, and that meant we got to use a new skill. One of the things we can do in dungeons like this is ask our newfound allies where our quest objective is. This turned out to be extremely helpful. It's not as direct as something like an icon on your compass showing you exactly where you need to go, but it's direct enough to give you an idea of what direction you should explore. Super cool. The best part is that you can ask anybody that you've managed to pacify, not just the ones who have joined up with you, so we can still get some utility out of enemies that won't be fighting. This does, unfortunately, require yet another skill check with the relevant language, so it's not guaranteed to work, but hey, it's better than having nothing at all, right? While we're in this dungeon, I managed to narrow down where our quest objective is, and I end up kind of stuck down here. I eventually died and had to find my way back again. This has highlighted a clear weakness of our build. We are really bad at climbing, and I didn't pick up Levitate. So let's remedy that, shall we? Eventually, I managed to get down, spin the necessary wheels, and get back up without dying. We find a few more warriors, find the ingredient we were looking for, and before we can make our escape, our latest warrior, Jeanette, is killed by the orc we failed to pacify. It's unfortunate, but what can we do? We return to the Mages Guild and get paid for the trauma of losing our friends. Alright, that's enough Mages Guild for now. I actually want to see which faction will train us in necromancy. We may not be able to bring our undead friends into polite society with us, but I still think they're cool and would like to be able to consistently use them. I went to the Fighters Guild because I was curious what kind of languages they could teach, and was pleased to find that they teach two. Giantish, which I'm not super concerned about, and Orcish, which is one of our primaries. That would be awesome, except the Mages Guild already has Orcish. Nonetheless, I still need money, so I decided to try something I hadn't done yet. I took on a quest to kill a werewolf. Ordinarily, these quests are some of the easiest. Enter dungeon, find enemy, kill enemy, go home and get paid. This challenge makes that a bit of a different process, however. Since we don't actually have the means to kill an enemy when we enter the dungeon, that means we have to resort to on-site procurement.
Weapons and equipment OSP? Yes.
This is likely to be the case until we can figure out how to keep our allies alive. We might dip into a bit of restoration magic in the future, just so that we don't have to keep finding new friends quite so often. It's during the course of this dungeon that I realized just how badly I fumbled by bringing my undead friends into the city. I met many skeletons in here and struggled to even pacify most of them, let alone bring any into the team. I kept having to reset the dungeon so that I could try and get them again, until eventually, I guess the werewolf died of starvation. Well, I don't need to loot its body, so we're going to be leaving the dungeon, and keep in mind that murder, while technically workable, is going to be a lot harder than I had originally thought. It's worth noting that while I can just quick save, quick load to play the numbers, that feels out of the spirit of this challenge to me. So if I'm resetting a dungeon, I'm leaving the dungeon entirely and re-entering it. When we return to Daggerfall and accept our payment, I make a note not to bother with optional quests that require me to kill something. Alright, well, we still haven't found out who can train our necromancy, so I decided to start looking at the different temples. Eventually, I found that the Temple of Mara can help me out, so it's time for us to become a devotee. This would be one of the minor criticisms I have of this mod. Because the mod directly replaces Spriggan, Nymph, and Centaurian with animal taming, necromancy, and Sylvan tongue, you get weird lore implications like Dibella and Mara teaching necromancy, or the Mages Guild doubling as a place to learn animal taming. Obviously, on its face, these things don't make intuitive sense. It's not a huge issue, mind you, but it's one of the things that feels kind of off to me. I wouldn't call myself a purist when it comes to modding, but I tend to do a lot less of it than I've seen from many other Elder Scrolls creators. Anyway, we're joining the Temple of Mara so we can get a discount on our necromancy training, and as has become custom for this video, we're going to take a dungeon quest from them. This one is to save an archaeologist. Upon arriving at the castle, our friendly bat, Batrick, almost immediately bites the dust. This reminded me that I forgot to grab healing spells after our last dungeon, and I immediately regretted everything. Well, it's too late now. We press on and manage to eventually get a friendly monk, who I promptly named Punch-a-Bunch. Our friendship, however, was tragically cut short by me not understanding how another new mechanic works. You see, some allies will have special abilities that you can use. The warriors from before have the ability to restore your party's fatigue. Super useful stuff, right? The monks is called Vow of Silence, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work. Turns out, it puts a spell into your hands. A spell that I accidentally hit Punch-a-Bunch with. Now, you can turn off friendly fire in the settings, but I had left mine on since that was the default. And when I hit Punch-a-Bunch with his own spell, he took exception to that. I'm sorry, Punch-a-Bunch. I didn't mean to draw your aggro like that. Needless to say, he had to die so that I could live. It took a while, but since I didn't need to kill anything, I wasn't pressed to reset the dungeon. We eventually found our archaeologist, returned to the benevolence of Mara, and completed the quest. I decided that now I would get some utility spells like levitation and the aforementioned healing spells. I want to avoid self-healing because you can reach a level of almost invincibility with regeneration that makes the game a little bit too easy. Potions and items with enchantments are totally fair game though. After we returned, I decided I wanted to get some more levels so we can start doing some main story stuff. We spend some time at the trainer's place getting to level 3, and then it's off to Wayrest for us. The first quest for Morgaia is super easy. Almost too easy, even. Under most circumstances. You see, I said at the beginning that I wasn't raising my fists for anything. That means anything. And of course that means I'm getting stopped by locked doors. Yep. Locked doors are going to be a problem for us. You see, if I really don't want to lift my fists for anything, I'm going to have to find a way to open them. In the past, I've simply aggroed enemies who are on the other side and had them bash the door open for me. This isn't too hard to do in most circumstances, but this room is Manimarco's throne room, meaning that there are no hostile entities on the other side. That means we need to find some other way to open the door. Now, I tried a few times to open it myself, but even though the door is a fairly low level, our pitifully small lockpicking skill isn't going to get the job done with any level of consistency. And we're going to have to come back here. At least one more time, maybe two, depending on how I end up using our teleport spell. So that's great. A minor roadblock that I ordinarily don't even consider rears its ugly head, and now I have to figure out how to get past it. Obviously, lockpicking it ourselves is going to be a last resort, but I happen to know something important. Do you recall Punch-a-Bunch's Vow of Silence ability? Well, it just so happens that there is an ability to open doors, and it's known by two different classes, the Thief and the Burglar. Now, off the top of my head, I believe these enemies can spawn randomly at night in most settled areas. I tried this for a bit and managed to spawn a bard, an archer, and a rogue, but no thieves. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, so it may still be possible, but I figured I should try to go with a sure thing next. There are particular quests for nobles, notably those that involve smuggling, that will spawn enemy thieves to attack you during the quest. I spent a while just getting one of these quests, and it wasn't too long until we actually did spawn the thieves. But here we ran into another issue. These thieves cannot be pacified. Drat, another idea down. I consider looking into dungeons that might spawn thieves, and this is when I have an epiphany. In Privateer's Hold, there is a single room that houses some kind of roguish enemy. I tend to skip right by it these days since I've been through that dungeon so many times, but when I go to check it, it is indeed a thief. It takes me a few tries, and each time I fail to get the thief to join me, I have to leave the dungeon and try again. But it's all worth it because now I have a thief. We then take this thief back to Wayrest, re-accept the quest with Morgaia, and return to Skurg Barrow. I reloaded a few times when Jarrett died a bit too early, but we did manage to get to the door, and just like we drew it up, it swings wide open for us. So that was a bit harder than anticipated. This isn't the only locked door we'll have to contend with either, so we're going to do our best to keep Jarrett alive for as long as possible. With our letter delivered, we can return to Morgaia with the response and continue trying to get some main quest progress done. Here's when I decided to take a bit of a break and close the game, and when I came back, I realized Jarrett had left me. This didn't happen other times that I logged out, so I was a bit annoyed, but what can you do? At least now I know where I need to go when I need to get another thief. For now, I'm going to return to the city of Daggerfall and do Obke's quests. First, she wants us to check up on her mother-in-law. Quick and easy. This quest never takes much time, especially once you've learned the password. Second, she wants us to collect some letters from a dungeon known as Castle Necromogan. This also isn't usually too hard, but it does take a little bit longer. These quests aren't strictly necessary for main quest completion, but I like doing them since it gives us a reason to do stuff at level 3 instead of skipping straight to the mid-game at level 5. Speaking of level 5, that's when we'll be getting our next quests. So we'll sell some of the spoils from Necromogan and train our Orcish and Daedric until we can take the next quest. We're doing this in Sentinel because we can get Prince Lotan's quest started so that we can minimize the amount of waiting we have to do. After we've done that, we'll set an anchor and we can go visit Sindasa in Daggerfall. She wants us to kill a werewolf. I wasn't sure how hard this would be. Our only friend at the moment is our spider, XATM-092, and as much as I love my pet spider, I don't know that he can solo a werewolf. Maybe if he gets lucky and paralyzes it, we don't have much of a choice but to get right into the dungeon and hope for the best. While we're in here, we get attacked by a sorcerer who we manage to convince to join our side. With the sorcerer firing arrows, a paralysis from the spider, and some healing spells from me, the werewolf goes down. I waste no time in returning to Sindasa, and now we can start the quests for the Dowager Queen. This is a little bit stressful because speaking to her makes the guards hostile, and I'd hate to lose friends here because that would be really annoying. We managed to accept the quest and we're off to find this courier. This quest goes like normal and we find that our courier is going to be in Midbury in 49 days. That's plenty of time for us to act on this letter we received so that we can continue our quest for Prince Lotan. The agent of the Underking directs us to Castle Phaelum, and while we're there, an orc that I named Agronat Gromalog joins us. Then, in the final room, right before I pick up the death certificate, he bites it. Must have been a, different Agronat Gromalog. We teleport to our anchor and turn in our quest to Prince Lotan. Checking our quests, we still have plenty of time before we can meet the courier, so I head to Midbury ahead of time, and we do a few letter deliveries so that we can hopefully earn a little extra scratch. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but hey, we're probably going to be paying for quite a few more levels, so we need all the dosh we can get. Eventually, the courier shows up, and we can continue our quest for the Emperor's letter. We get to go back to Minnesera and report our findings. She gives us a pat on the back, and we can get her next quest, which sends us to Orsinium. Orsinium is full of orcs. This is one of the reasons I took Orcish as a primary skill. This dungeon has so many frickin' orcs. As soon as we walk in, an orc attacks us. We also immediately get the orc warlord in the corner to join us, so that's cool. Ugrokish will surely be an asset to the team. We speak with Gortwag, who basically tells us that we have free reign of the place, and that if we find the letter, he'll recognize us as worthy. Immediately after this, we speak with the orc shaman and manage to get him on our team too. Dickhead the orc shaman has officially changed teams, and this is a full party for the first time this run. Marshall, XATM-092, Ugrokish, and Dickhead, ready to take on the world. This dungeon is going swimmingly until the very last room when Dickhead decides to cast a spell. He manages to kill not just XATM-092, but also Ugrokish in a single attack, a Dickhead to the end it seems. At least we managed to get another orc, Lurzkar Darmar, and an orc sergeant, Dornan. New friends in tow, we can return to Minnesera and get ready to get to level 7. Close the game and reload it, only to find that my friends have disappeared again. How disappointing. Getting to level 7 was a bit of an ordeal. You see, if you don't want to take out a loan for some reason, and you can't just kill every enemy you run into, cash tends to get a little tight. I started out trying to get some extra cash by doing odd jobs for the Temple of Mara, but they paid me in a 15-kilo statue that I had to pawn myself, so I took matters into my own hands. I went back to Privateer's Hold again to fetch myself a new thief. Meet Orvo. Once we managed to get him to join us again, we made our way to Sentinel. We've brought him along for one very important reason. We're going to steal. But Rag, didn't you join the temple to do good deeds for the people of the Iliac Bay? No? What gave you that idea? I joined because they would teach me to control the undead, which is already illegal. The thief's ability to unlock doors is useful once again, this time for more nefarious deeds than last time. The thief's ability is a 100% open spell. Unfortunately, if you watched my video on thievery, you'll understand that it still sometimes fails if we're not a high enough level, which means it's still a bit of a crapshoot if we don't know how strong a building's locks are. I also learned that abilities have some kind of a cooldown. I don't know exactly how long it is, I didn't read the details on the mod page, but I assume it's a daily power. I guess it would be a little overpowered if we were just infinitely breaking into every building forever. Regardless, we snag enough loot to make around 11k and get to training. Once we're level 7, we do some fast traveling and run into a zombie from Manny. Now, Orvo can't solo this thing, even with me healing him as backup. This is a problem. We flee the scene to Skurg Barrow. If the thief can't solo the zombie, then we'll simply dip into the dungeon and see if we can't snag a couple of friends. Meet Lost John's son. I figure that if we can't defeat the zombie fairly, we might as well make the fight more suited to my tastes. Those tastes being lopsided and in my favor. All this extra effort pays off, however, and after some time, we finally manage to take this guy down. But not before we lose our newest friend. This means we can now go into the dungeon and speak with Manimarco again. This is when we run into a few more enemies. After that last fight, I wanted to sleep in the dungeon, so we ran into a skeleton that I promptly named Mynuts Argon, and we managed to get both of the zombies between us and Manny, who I named Where My Bob Go and Where My Diggo. With a party that's 3/5 undead, we receive our next quest to break into Castle Sentinel. For my efforts, I decide to trade Manny my skeleton for one of his ancient liches. This one's a Sararak. He's better because he's a Sarer than a Sararak is. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Totally. On our way to the castle, we're informed that apparently Queen Akarithi wants to meet us. What a total coinky-dink and not something that I manufacture to happen every single time I play through this game. We go to the Queen, she tells us to break into Castle Wayrest, I say cool, let me break in here first, and head for the lever puzzle. This dungeon is mildly stressful, because I don't really like having to reload to reroll my RNG against enemies, but if I lose allies between here and the lich we have to kill, it might get rough. Where My Diggo and his sister didn't make it, but we did manage to make a new friend when an archer attacked us after resting. Dink Hardwood joins us for a battle against Prince Carolus. Surely a duel that will be spoken of for he died in one hit. A Sararak showed him who the superior lich was, and it was not Carolus. After this, we head for Castle Wayrest, and we have to make our way through that mess. This time, I have the good sense to set my party to not attack anything before we fast travel to a populated area. Our regional reputation will not suffer if the guards never catch me, no matter how much my necromancy gets reported. Actually doing this dungeon is a little bit annoying. I left my party on passive in the beginning section to try and make sure that everybody followed me through all the teleporters and all the other nonsense. I tamed a rat, named it Rattata, and it died less than 5 minutes later, so I guess that one's not evolving. Actually getting our objective isn't a problem, but I did forget to mark outside somewhere, so I'm going to have to walk back out the old-fashioned way. Not particularly difficult, but a little tedious. Especially since I don't have the route back memorized nearly as well as the route there. At least we get another archer friend, who I promptly named Dank Smalls. A few minutes later, we're out of the dungeon and heading back to Sentinel to give Akarithi the good news in the form of an incriminating painting. Now we have to hit up some trainers again and get to level 8, except no, we can't because we're poor. You know what that means? It's time for us to do some more theft. Yeah, if it's not obvious, without banks, we're a bit strapped for cash, and without the ability to kill things ourselves, I don't much care for the prospect of farming gold legally. That means we're resorting to illegal means. It's not really much harder, but it does mean a little extra effort. We make some cash, and I travel to Ayasofya so that I might find a temple tomorrow and get some more skills. Now, we can only get our skills up to level 51 with trainers. This isn't a problem or anything, but it does mean that we're not going to be getting much more in the way of skills. We maxed out Necromancy, Orcish, and Daedric fairly early on, and even with as many skeletons and liches and ghosts as I've attempted to sway, we're still only at 51. So let's not be too excited about this as we push into level 8 and start getting into the end game. So our first order of business is to free Medora from Direnni Tower. Step 1 in doing this is to first speak to her at Direnni Tower. In service of this, I make sure my party is set to passive and then mad dash through the tower until we're right outside of Medora's room. Only then do I make my team take the offensive. After dying to the Lich once, we speak with Medora herself and receive our first quest from her. It's another mad dash out of the dungeon and Orvo does not make it. At least we got a Wraith to replace him, but damn it, that sucks. As we're getting the giant unicorn horn, I ponder whether this means it comes from a species of oversized unicorns, or if the unicorn's horn was simply abnormally large. The Lich outside of Medora's room decides to grace us with his presence, and I name him Vecna. We return to Medora and hand her the unicorn horn. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, and we can leave. On our way out, I find a skeleton who I named Private Howhigh. Still hasn't gotten me my rain cloud. We do some fast traveling around Sentinel and get to meet with an agent of the Underking in this place. Is it Ketubia? I don't get it. What's a Ketubia? Yeah, the Underking's agent didn't think that was funny either. He sends us to Ikalan to a place called Castle Lugwich as punishment. Joke's on him though, I made a new friend who knows where the quest objective is. Take that, I guess. We actually got another one, and I named them Arthawuminithil and Anyaj Leshame. Honestly, when we have a full party of allies, most enemies don't stand much of a chance. It's exceptionally rare for there to be more than 3 enemies in a given encounter, so constantly fighting 4v2 or 4v1 makes dungeoning not as difficult as I would have expected. We clear the way up to the Vampire Ancient, who is, unfortunately, stuck behind this door. We don't have a thief with us, which is unfortunate, but at least he's bashing on the door, so it should just be a matter of time, right? Well, it was! But it took a full 5 minutes before he finally managed to break down the door to his own demise. And guess what? When we teleported out, we were immediately attacked by guards, who happened to be using poison. Thank goodness I didn't save over my last quick save, or this would have been exceptionally annoying. I spent a while trying to run to the nearest temple, which was 4 blocks on the world map away, and maybe I could have made it if I had a healing spell or potion, but I had neither of those things and instead perished every time. We reloaded the save and tried again. This time, I managed to avoid getting poisoned, but just as a precaution, I parted ways with Vecna. He served his purpose well, and now I guess he can go back to Direnni Tower or something. Now we need to get to level 10. Level 10 is going to be a little harder to achieve, and it's my own fault. We're again resorting to theft, but this time we're going to need substantially more money. Now, obviously when you level up, training becomes more expensive. For the uninitiated, training costs 100 times your level in gold. So training at level 1 is only 100. At level 2 is 200, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, at level 9, we're going to be spending 900 gold per training session. Normally, if you want to get to level 10, that amounts to about 13,500 gold. 15 training sessions at 900 gold apiece. Unfortunately, I had kind of decided that since this is a language run, I should level languages for this. Now, if you'll recall, way back at the beginning, I selected a single magic skill, Mysticism, since there wasn't a 12th language to use. Mysticism is now level 37. And our highest minor language skill is 17. Now, for any newcomers to the channel, or perhaps if someone needs a refresher, here's how leveling works. You need 15 skill ups to gain a character level. All primary skills will give you progress towards this. For major skills, only the 2 highest level ones will give you progress. So if all of your majors are at 30, then leveling any of them works. If one of them is lower, say 25, then bringing that skill up to 30 will make 0 progress toward a new character level. For minor skills, only your highest level skill actually progresses the character. For us, currently, that's Mysticism. But this is a language run, so I'm not going to be training mysticism when I have 5 perfectly good languages to choose from. What this means is that we need at least 18,000 gold to make one of our skills on par with mysticism. Then we'll need another 13,500 in order to actually level up. So that's easy, right? Just steal 31,500 gold in fenced goods. And it was easy. It just took forever to do. I also ended up getting a letter from the Thieves Guild, and they weren't too happy about my thieving antics, but I'm not going to be joining today. Okay, we're level 10. We just have to get through the final stretch of quests. As soon as we hit level 10, we get a vision from Medora, who tells us to go to Gortwag in Orsinium. Obviously we do this, and he'll tell us where to find the Dust of Restful Death. While we're in the dungeon, I get Richard Falls Off and make copious use of my ability to petition my allies for directions. Finding a mummy that I can't pacify tells me everything that I need to know. Getting the dust marks the beginning of the end, and we return to Medora. When I speak to Medora, she tells us to come back in a month when she's done magicking the dust. Now, normally I would sit in Medora's room and sleep for a month while I wait for her to do magic at the dust. But since I decided not to clear this area, I figured it would be faster to leave the dungeon and fast travel for a month. On our way out, I find a wraith that I name 1-1 Spirit Token and a ghost that I name Gotham Orbs. Fast traveling gets us to our next quest with a level of expedience, and after we accept it, we leave Direnni Tower for the last time with a level of expeditiosity indicative of my excitement at the prospect of speaking to the late King Lysandus. Oh, I also picked up a ghost called Weimlier and the vampire Mavis. Honestly, there are so many allies, it's getting hard to keep track of them all. I did keep a running list, though. Some allies come and go, and all the while I'm forgetting the path to Lysandus. Can you blame me? We do eventually find him, and the man himself tasks us with avenging him. Well, how could we ever say no to that? Little do I know, this is where my dreams come crashing to the earth. And it's not because I forgot to mark the entrance and have to walk all the way out. Not at all. It's actually much more annoying than that. You see, I've been trying to avoid bashing doors open as much as I possibly can, trying to force NPCs to do it, or using the thief's ability to open locks. This has served me well so far. Unfortunately, there's a limit to how useful the thief is able to be. The thief's ability works like a 100% success open spell. The open spell only works if you are at least the same level as the lock, and locks range from level 1 up to level 20. The first door in Woodborne Hall is a surprisingly high level. That means that we're not able to open it yet, but here's the kicker. For all intents and purposes, this is our max level. It is, of course, possible to get higher, but the time investment in getting from level 10 up to potentially level 20 is just ridiculous. Training our language skills is not a difficult thing to do. What it is tedious. It takes so long to gain even a single level in one of these skills. It's so egregious that the mod even has several options to help with this. I left them at their defaults, but the mod not only lets you get more pacify attempts per enemy, it also changes how many uses of the skill are tallied each attempt, which increases its leveling speed. By default, these are both at 3. But they can go up as high as 10. For our reference, that means I can potentially get 9 uses of my skills out of an enemy by default. But we can get up to 100 uses if we adjust the settings. I decided the time investment wasn't worth it by any stretch, and beat the door down myself. For the record, I did try to use my lockpicking skill first. But after leaving the dungeon a few times and trying again and again, we got nothing doing and my patience wore too thin. I bashed the door in and was finally able to move on and kill Woodborne. The rest of the path there wasn't too bad. Woodborne himself was a pushover, as he always is, and after defeating him, we're given our penultimate task: the claiming of the totem of Tiber Septim. Unfortunately, it too is protected by the most clever of security measures, a locked door. This is another door that is protected by a high-level lock. Since I'd already bashed the last one down, I felt no shame in doing this, but was still kind of annoyed about the whole thing. This one was actually difficult to do, too. My character is extremely slow, so opening the door was not a quick process. Since the guards become hostile, having my friends try to protect me while I open the door is a bit of a crapshoot. After this, the dungeon is mostly the same as it always is, but I brought an orc warlord underwater to help me fight an ice atronach. Once we grab the totem from its place in the dungeon, we can safely escape and hand the totem off to Briscienna. Why side with the Empire? I guess because Imperials in later games are the ones who are good at speech. I don't really have a good explanation. With that, we only have one challenge remaining. And spoiler warning, we managed to do it fairly easily. I know, shocking. It was possible without allies, doing it with them isn't much different. We're a little squishier, I suppose. I'm going to use this section to talk a bit more about the mod because I think it's interesting. I think it's generally an improvement upon the base game's languages. I went over it a little bit at the beginning, but in base Daggerfall Unity, it's basically just a passive, sometimes enemies don't attack thing that just radiates out of you at all times. The mod turns it into an active decision, and the additional utility of getting to ask allies for directions is actually extremely useful. Buying and selling stuff with my allies wasn't something I ever really used though. Vendors in towns have infinite gold to give you so long as you have items to sell, but selling to random NPCs means they have very limited gold quantities. I never ended up being able to buy anything of significance from them either. They'll seemingly sell all the stuff that they normally would have dropped as loot, but due to the way I built my character, I was rarely carrying enough gold to actually make use of it. It's probably more useful in a normal run with a more normal character. By far, my favorite thing allies could do is give directions to quest objectives. My only complaint for this is that you have to pass yet another language check for it, even if they've joined your party. For RP purposes, I could maybe understand this for animal taming or the actual languages. But when it came to the humanoid allies using streetwise or etiquette, it didn't make much sense. So there's some good and some bad in there. I think one of the changes I liked least was putting vampires and liches under the necromancy skill. Fundamentally, I understand that it makes sense. They're undead after all. The issue is that liches and vampires are not like zombies or skeletons. They're fundamentally different because they choose to exist as they are, rather than as mindless thralls. The base game understands this. Liches and vampires can be pacified by the etiquette skill, the same one used for human enemies like knights and archers. That said, it would absolutely make etiquette the most overpowered language skill in the game. For reference, etiquette ended up being our highest level language skill when we completed the game, sitting pretty at 54, a full 3 levels higher than most of our other skills. Sylvan Tongue seems like a clean solution for the centaurs, nymphs, and spriggans, and animal taming is a neat addition. That said, changing the skills completely did make learning necromancy from Mara pretty funny, but it still stands out as being different from the base version of the game. Overall, I'd say I'm nitpicking stuff that most people probably don't care about. The mod's interesting, and I think if you're looking for something to change things up, it's worth giving it a shot. I think the only enemies you don't have the ability to pacify with this mod are atronachs and werewolves, but to be honest, the fact that we can now pacify every animal in the game makes these two enemies barely a footnote in my experience. With those closing thoughts out of the way, we can claim the Mantella, snag a cool picture with our only surviving friend, and leave the Mantellan crux. Then, Nulfaga bids us to read time, as it shall be written upon the Elder Scrolls. Thanks for watching. This one took longer than I would have liked. On the side here you can see all the different allies I had for this run. I did my best to name all of them, but some of them I forgot and others died too quickly. I'll be back next month with another video. Have a good one. See you then.